Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Top Dog Talk podcast. I'm your host, Harris Reno. Alongside me, co-host Dan Kiley. Man, it's a rough start. Forgot where the countdown button was, and then forgot the intro. But it's all right. We're gonna rebound. Jeremiah Stoddard. I am not late. I am on time for when I want to be on time. As I will point out. Dan, let's get into it. Episode 97. How are you doing this Tuesday evening?
I'm doing fine. I'm tired. Let's go. I'm ready for our show.
Let's do it. Hot topic number one today. Should college football have a preseason game?
I don't
Or
think
exhibition game?
Yeah, preseason is not the right word, but maybe like an exhibition game. Maybe that's what you would call those easy scheduling games that a lot of the schools use to start the season. But I think it would be fun just to have like an exhibition game. But then again, they may not play anybody. So I don't know. It's a tough one for me, and I'm the one that posed the question, so I should have a better answer. But what I do think is that they should have joint practices, and we're going to touch on that here in a second. But I would like to see them do something with another team before the start of the practice. But everybody's so worried about injuries. I don't know, but I think it would be kind of cool, and maybe that is why. Maybe if you were to have like a preseason exhibition game, you could eliminate some of those cupcake schedule games and then still be able to fund them, be able to pay these teams to come in and kick the shit out of them. And maybe that's that's an option. What do you say, Harrison? What do you think? Do you think there should be something preseason?
I'm always here for like a satellite practice, a joint practice, Dan. Like that's my big thing. Now I don't get it because the pro coaches do it all the time, and yes, it only ends up in fights. Like the pro game, there's always going to be fights. If you have one joint practice, you don't have a fight. Your guys don't want it. They don't want it. But I'm here for joint practices, not necessarily a preseason game. I love the idea of a spring game being against an opposing team. I think it's it would be fun. Maybe don't take away from the spring scrimmage itself. Maybe just have it in addition. But I'm here. All right, Dan.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going on with Harrison. I don't know if you guys can hear me or not. I hope so, for God's sakes. Harrison's mic keeps muting himself. But anyway, we'll go ahead and move on to the second hot topic while Harrison gets his mic situation under control. And that would be, should the NFL scrap preseason altogether and replace them with joint practices, more joint practices? My answer to that is simply yes. And I think it's a very easy conversation to have. Nobody cares about the preseason games, especially the coaches. And all you have to do is look at Arthur Smith for that. He doesn't play anybody during those games. So what is the point of playing them? Listen, from the ownership perspective, it's just a money grab and it's a selfish thing where they want the money of the extra home game. But it's stupid. Nobody wants to go to those games. You have to buy them as part of your season ticket package, which is kind of horseshit if you ask me. But the joint practices you get a lot of value out of, and that's one of the things that you hear across the board from organization to organization is how much work they're able to get in the joint practices and how effective and efficient they are. And yeah, I know that there's our fight sometimes, but I think if it was a more of a thing and they would understand, and I think you could be very successful with a joint practice. So if it were up to me, and I know it will never happen because it's a money grab situation, but if it was just pure what is better for the game, I think joint practices would be wonderful. Get rid of the preseason games because it's an absolute joke. It's a farce. Now, I will say before I let Harrison answer, if he's ever going to get his mic working again, I enjoyed the hell out of the Washington-Baltimore game last night. Listen, don't at me, okay? I'm just telling you, it was a very, very entertaining preseason game. The starters played the entire first half, and then the twos played the rest of the game. You didn't really get down in the weeds. And then, of course, you had Jake Fromm leading the comeback for Washington, ending Baltimore's 24-game winning streak. So, yes, I am ashamed to say it, but I did enjoy that preseason game. Harrison? All right. So, Harrison is not going to have anything to add, although mute your mic because I can hear everything you're doing. So that's going to take us to the rant of the week. And this wasn't my rant because Harrison has hijacked my segment, which is all about me. But Harrison wants to make it about him this week. So his rant idea is training camp stats or preseason game stats, and people are posting all these stats, and it's pointless. There's no value to them. A great coach once said, and I can't remember his name. That's why I'm saying great coach. It might not even been a good coach. No, actually, it was a general manager. He said, "I can't tell you who can play after watching a preseason game, but I can tell you who can't play." And I think that speaks volumes. You can find out very quickly if a guy can handle the NFL, if he can play in the NFL, or I'm sorry, you can't tell if he can play like long term and be successful, but you can tell right away when a guy can't play. It is very obvious when a guy cannot play and he's no good and he's not going to be able to cut it in the league. That becomes very, very obvious. But it's very hard to take production in a preseason game and translate it to the NFL. It was kind of funny if you listened to Troy Aikman last night in the game. He was talking about Sam Howell. He says, "I hope he doesn't leave this game feeling like I did my first year in the NFL." He's like, "I went to the NFL and I dominated the preseason, and I was telling everybody, this is nothing, I can handle this." And then I ended up to go 0 for 9 to start his NFL career, or whatever it was. Maybe Harrison would know because he's a Cowboys fan. But Troy Aikman's point was he put up great stats, had a great preseason, and then proceeded to blow chunks the first half, if not more, of his rookie year. So, stats are overvalued and overinflated, and they don't really mean anything. And Harrison, this was your rant, so go ahead and take it.
Yeah. So Dan, the whole purpose I put this in here, and it's actually a great point. I preseason stats is something I find on my Twitter feed all the time. Like not even preseason stats, training camp stats. Excuse me. Practice stats. Gosh, got an accent there. Yeah, sorry for the technical difficulties, people. The mic wanted to cut out me. The mic that I paid an exorbitant amount of money for did not want to work today. But anyways, yeah. So my point was, as I actually put down on the screen, my point was there's no point to it. Like, why are we hounding on quarterbacks for throwing interception or making a bad play in practice when that's really the place where you want them to try things, where you want them to find their limits? Like, it's counterintuitive. If they can't go to practice and try things out and make mistakes, then what's the point of practice? Is my thing. So training camp stats, most useless thing in the world for me. No, this actually isn't related to Dak Prescott. The reason that I sparked this was actually a tweet from, I believe it was Dove Cleveland, about Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy threw 10 picks in one practice. That was the tweet. And actually, it's in my retweets. Right before I texted Dan that I wanted to do this. Like, I don't care if Brock Purdy threw 10 picks in a training camp practice. I really don't at all. It's useless. That doesn't mean a thing. It's not an actual game. Because I know when the game comes, if Brock Purdy throws no interceptions, then, hey, that one practice where he threw 10, doesn't matter. Doesn't mean anything. So, yeah, let him try some things. Let him be risky with the football. Let him find his limits before he goes out in the field and maybe try something dumb that he could have done in practice if it wasn't for the training camp stats whizzes. So I don't understand it. Never will. If we want to keep stats, talk about stats, do it in an actual game, not in practice. I'm not here for it, Dan, at all. With that being said, let's talk about quarterback of our own. Carson Beck, named the starting quarterback. Not really surprising here, Dan. I think it's been the worst kept secret in Athens kind of all offseason long is Carson Beck's kind of the leader in that camp. And as we figured out, I'm kind of surprised that Kirby just went out here in the first press conference and said, yeah, he's the quarterback. Like, yes, everybody kind of was hinting at it. Everybody was talking about it, but nobody expected Kirby to come out here and, right before week one say, yeah, he's our starter. I thought it was going to be one of those ways that he was going to just send a guy out, not even say anything and just keep that to himself.
Well, I'm sure glad he didn't do that. And I think that would be disrespectful to Carson Beck because from all indications are that he's having a great camp. Now, it's one of two ways. You have to believe it one way or the other. It's either that he didn't want to name a starter early because he didn't want the other guys to feel like they weren't getting a chance, or you have to believe that Brock really made it that close. And, I was listening to the radio today and there was, I'm not going to plug him, but there was a guy on the radio who's a Georgia beat writer. And he was saying that, everything that he's heard is that it wasn't so much that they didn't want to just name it early as the fact that Brock actually put up a fight, and he wasn't going to go away, and he was very competitive. And it's very much um, a situation where, you know, when you're a quarterback, you have to have control of the team. You have to be able to walk into the huddle and everybody knows it's your team. That's a very difficult balance where you want to give everybody equal opportunity to battle for that job. Okay. But somebody at some point has to take the leadership role. And I think if you're asking me for my opinion, which I've never been in the quarterback room at Georgia, but I think Carson had done enough. And I also think that Kirby felt like, or the offensive staff felt like, that Carson has to take ownership of this team and they have to give him a chance to really get a running start into the season with everybody knowing that it's his show. So I think the timing was right because he's never started a game at University of Georgia. He's got to have a chance to put this team on his back. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, it's doing weird things today. Every time I unmute, the whole screen just goes frozen. So I don't know what's going on today with anything. But anyways, yeah, kind of going off what Dan said. I like you said, I think it is respectful to Carson to go ahead and put it out there. Like if he was the runaway candidate, and spam link not clicking on it. Hey man, I ain't one of those bots in here. We had one of those days. Not that one. No, that's an actual link if you want to click on it. But yes, thank you, Jeremiah, for derailing the segment. Yeah, Carson Beck was, at least from what everyone has heard, the guy was going to be the guy. Got the first team reps. Not to say that these other guys did, because everybody got their chance, but I mean, it's as simple as going back and looking at who took the reps last season. Like, yes, last season doesn't really translate into this season because things can change. People can, develop and change. But Carson Rep was the first quarterback on the field when Stetson Bennett was on the field last year. He was QB2. And like I said, that can change over an offseason, but it didn't. Carson Beck's now the guy in Athens. And, Dan, when I look at all of these experts, some of these past players, some of these past quarterbacks, in the family tree that is the Georgia quarterback tree, starting quarterback tree, there are some high expectations. Like everybody thinks this guy's going to do well, and some people have gone as far to say he's going to be a one and done type guy. He's going to be here for 15 games. He's going to go to the league, similar to what Mac Jones did at Alabama, and be a first round draft pick. What are your expectations for Carson Beck? Because when you look at the talent he has around him and what Georgia's done the last two seasons, he fits the prototype for what the NFL wants. He has the height Stetson didn't have. Probably has a better arm than Stetson. Like he fits everything that the NFL is looking for in a quarterback. The only thing that they don't know right now is what he looks like on the field.
And, the only other thing too is you don't know exactly how mobile he is, and that has been a big factor in what Kirby wants out of the quarterback position, or Monken, or whoever the case may be. So we're going to find that out really quick, whether he's mobile, mobile enough. Can he move around enough? But I really have sky high expectations. Now, I know he has Brock coming back for a senior year, but he doesn't have some of the weapons and some of the tools that Stetson had to his disposal, but they are still pretty deep. They still have some really good players, and there is a really good chance he could put up really big numbers. So I'm not trying to sit on the fence here, but I'm going to tell you, if he has this type of season that everybody expects him to have, where he puts up Heisman type numbers and they go on to win a third consecutive national championship, or at least are playing for it, he's going to the league. I mean, because at the end of the day, you go to college, one of two things. Either you go to college, going to college, you have zero chance of playing in the NFL. You're just wanting to play for school and get your education paid for. And then there's the other guys who they go to school, it's a means to the end. And the end is the NFL. And that's where they want to go. I don't know Carson, but he's a quarterback. And I would think that payday in the NFL would look really good to anybody. I don't care if you come from money or not. That kind of money is generational money. And you could just sign that deal tomorrow. You got to do it. I mean, I understand when guys come back because they're trying to improve their draft stock. But if he has the type of season that a lot of people believe he can have, and he goes and plays for another national championship, win it or not, but plays well, he's got to go. I mean, and I think everybody in the room would tell him he's got to go, right? I think you'd be crazy to tell him to come back for another year. I mean, Tim Tebow did. Tim Tebow came back for a fourth year, and I'm the only reason I'm using his name is because he is a legendary. Some people want to say the best quarterback to ever play college football, but it was very obvious he was a college quarterback, right? Tommy Frazier at Nebraska, who you have no idea who that is, but he's probably the best college quarterback ever. Period. Danny Werfel, another guy. But some of those guys, like, they were just college guys. Carson Beck, to me at least, and a very small, limited sample size, but the guy just screams NFL to me. Now, we could be wrong, and he could go out there and blow it. I don't know. But what do we got? You're on the same. Yeah, I did watch Swamp Kings today. It was actually really good. And they brought up some points, but we're not going to talk about it today because Harrison hasn't watched it yet. He said no spoilers. Now he's talking about he's not going to watch it. You're so full of crap.
Dan, I did. You bring up Tim Tebow, and I saw this tweet earlier today, and I have it on screen now. Dan, I got to show you it. I have to. So people out here, if you're not watching on YouTube, you might want to get on YouTube. Coach Dan Casey, good follow on Twitter for people that want to learn a little bit more about football than they already do, said, and I quote, "Hopefully the documentary will remind everyone that the late 2000s Florida was basically running the triple option." And he has some clips here, Dan, that, I mean, if this doesn't look like 2010 Georgia Tech, I don't know what will. Well, not this one. There's another clip. Excuse me. Like, I mean, it basically is. There's one where they're legit running the triple option. So if we're talking about quarterbacks, to me, there's a few I put above Tim Tebow. But if we're talking about athletes to play the quarterback position, there's no doubt that he's up there. But I don't think Tim Tebow.
Okay, hold on. Time out. The quarterback position is to run the offense and score points. It doesn't matter if you throw it or run it. That's irrelevant. True. Tommy Frazier is the greatest college quarterback of all time, and he was a triple option quarterback.
True, but to me, I'm not putting Tebow up there. He may be in the top 5, but am I putting him number 1? Probably not. I think there's definitely, I mean, Caleb Williams probably going to have a strong case if all season goes well. Joe Burrow has a strong case, although that was one really great season. Colt McCoy has a case to be top 10, although I don't know if I put him number 1.
This is recency bias.
Definitely recency bias. Definitely. But to me, yeah. That's top for the note today. We'll get there again. And we'll talk about Swamp Kings a little bit. I've watched maybe 5 minutes of episode 1 and just haven't gotten around to doing it. I will probably do it. I was shocked to hear that it's 4 episodes long.
I didn't know that. I didn't.
Everything else has been 1.
I didn't carve out 4 hours for that today, but somehow I managed to do it.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'll definitely. I saw the criticism that it wasn't going into what we all wanted to learn about, the off-field issues. Now, if there are Florida fans in here, they're going to say, well, Georgia's going to have a documentary in 15, 20 years. Georgia probably will, but it won't be about off-the-field issues. It will be about potentially, one of the greatest dynasties in college football. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. Let's not talk about that. Dan, you had a suggestion for a topic before we get into our Week 0 predictions. And it was talking about kind of the depth of this roster, because we do know that Georgia's team is a little bit banged up going into this season. You have basically a week of preparation before UT Martin, and instead of doing preview for UT Martin, because find me people who want to talk about UT Martin, and we'll do it. But let's talk about Georgia's depth of this roster. Let's start with the good, Dan. Where in this roster, and I've listed them out in bullet points, kind of just off the preliminary top of my head. You don't have to go by that. You can disagree. Feel free. Where do you feel great at from a depth perspective?
All right, so I am going to deviate from your list a little bit. We talked about the depth at wide receiver, and I will tell you that yes, numbers wise, they have plenty of guys, but I think that if you had Ladd McConkey go down, you would have a lot of concerns in the building about who's going to fit where or whatever. And he's a very productive guy. They don't necessarily like. And you mentioned Rah and Lovett as being guys that are going to step right in and do great things, and they very well may. And it could shake out that way. And I said that out of the wide receiver position, it always seems like somebody that we're not talking about comes out of nowhere and has a great year. And so for that reason, I will give you that one. Where wide receiver, we do have enough depth to sustain, and I don't want to say season-ending injuries or anything like that, but if somebody gets nicked up and has to miss a game or two, like we can survive that, right? I think the other one is offensive line, and that's kind of dangerous because I don't like touching offensive line. But Georgia has recruited very well. It's unfortunate, with I believe it's pretty much public knowledge that Green got banged up, right? Ankle or something, or you feel free to chime in, Harrison. I'm drowning here, but I think was it
Ernest had a back injury last year that held him out, but I believe he is healthy now.
No, no, no. I thought he got banged up the other day in that scrimmage.
Oh, he may have. I
Oh well. Anyway, because I saw it in multiple places that he was injured, but I don't know the severity of it. But that's kind of a shame. The kid just won the left tackle job, or at least perceived.
think we lost Dan. Yeah. Guys, in the comments, let me know if we lost Dan. I think we lost Dan. Dan's frozen on my screen. Jeremiah, let me know. But kind of going off of what Dan said as we wait to get him back. Yeah, I agree with him. I think offensive line, there is some depth there. At least in bodies, maybe not in proven. I don't want to say production, because proven production as it relates to offensive line, it's hard to prove production other than maybe your performance in games and where your draft stock is. But I do feel comfortable. I think if Ernest Green does win the left tackle job, as is kind of expected, I think Austin Blasky maybe, Austin Blasky could probably start elsewhere. Like, there's no doubt in my mind Austin Blasky could start at a number of other colleges, other SEC programs. So I feel pretty good about left tackle. Right tackle, kind of the same thing. I think Blasky can start there. There's other guys in Georgia's roster that I think can step up and play right tackle. The only real question mark for me is really just guard. Georgia has a lot of dudes. Like that is a good thing. Georgia has dudes when it comes to the offensive line. I just don't know exactly the pecking order there at guard just yet. Obviously, you have Tate Ratledge and Xavier Truss expect to be the starters at right and left guard. You have SVP at center, and there's been a lot of buzz regarding the guys behind him. And Dan's internet's out. There he is. We'll see. Dan, are you back?
Man, I'm telling you what, that's 2 weeks in a row. My internet just dropped in the middle of the show. I don't know what is going on. I apologize, folks. This has been probably one of the worst shows we've ever done, technology-wise. But if I could pick up where I was just saying, I think on the offensive line, we have enough quality depth. The only hesitation I would have is I get a little bit nervous when you try to put a young guy into on the field for SEC play. So that could that could be a little bit dangerous. And then I would just say defense in general. You listed out positions, but defense in general, they have done such a fantastic job of developing and recruiting on the defensive side of the football that I think that they can withstand an injury here or there. I would say you have cornerback depth as a highlight. I would say if you had to pick a position not to lose a guy, it would be corner, because they're trying to figure out who's the starting corner opposite Lassiter. And I really think if Lassiter were to get banged up, that would be a huge, huge loss for Georgia. I think it would be very difficult to overcome that because he's such a special player. But I would say defensively, I think we could afford to lose, a guy for a game or two and be able to withstand that. What say you, Harrison? Because and we were going to say tight end, but I think we kind of both agree that yes, there's quality depth at tight end position, but you can't replace Brock Bowers. You just can't.
No, and we'll all find that out, at least by next year, how hard it is, to replace a guy like Brock Bowers. I mean, Florida's already learned with Kyle Pitts. You lose a generational tight end, it may take a little bit before you can quote unquote replace him in that sense. But for me, Dan, at corner, I listed corner because Georgia has 3 or 4 guys fighting for that number 2 role. And while I don't Kirby hasn't said anything about, at least when I watch his presser, he didn't say anything about we're not ready to make that decision yet. So I take that as, one or two things. Either that means you have 3 or 4 guys with very little separation and, you're just not ready to name them yet. Or you have 3 or 4 guys where kind of I think what's going on in Tuscaloosa, that are just not grabbing that brass ring and proving themselves and elevating themselves to a higher level. But at corner, if there is a guy that gets injured like a Kamari Lassiter or gets hurt, I do feel like Georgia has recruited well enough, can develop well enough that they can kind of overcome that long term. I know the last time I think a corner got hurt for Georgia, like major injury, was DeAndre Baker in 18 or 19. He got hurt, and Tyson Campbell had to play some games. So I feel pretty good about that spot as a whole. Dan, starting with concerns, I mean, we need to start this with running back, obviously, because that's the place they're getting hurt by right now. They don't have bodies. Like, they have dudes like, we know Kendall Milton, we know Dejan Edwards, but they don't have the bodies to withstand. I think right now they got to get healthy.
Well, yeah, the running back. Here's the thing: is you have so many guys in that running back room, and they've done such a good job of recruiting at such a high level. Like, name a running back you could do without. You know what I'm saying? Like, or you couldn't do without. I mean, however you want to phrase it. Like you say, Kendall, because he's like, that's the one that everybody always wants to talk about. Like, Kendall's not going to play. Well, hell, he hasn't really played that much the last 3 years because he's always been nicked up. So they've survived. Dejan. Well, if Dejan's one out, well, then, Kendall will get an opportunity to be the running back that he's supposed to be. If one of the, I mean, you just got guys like Logan Paul. Oh, no, God dang it. I just did it.
Andrew,
I was trying so hard not to do that. That's why I never bring his name up.
Andrew Paul.
Yeah, Andrew Paul. It's supposed to be that guy. Roderick Robinson, Branson Robinson. Like, if you tell me Kendall can't play the whole season, I'm like, all right, we got like 5 more. If you tell me that Dejan can't, I'm like, fine, we got 5 more. If you tell me that we're gonna have to make it through this season with Savion Clark at running back, I'm like, fine. Like, I think he could do it. Like, we just have so many guys in that room, and I get your point that they've been being. Milton and Edwards are dealing with injuries right now. Of course they are. Why wouldn't they be? But you got the 2 Robinsons, Roderick and Bronson Robinson. Like, dude, listen, you're gonna tell me you want to give Bronson Robinson 30 carries a game? I am down for that. Like, that guy is a bully ball. To me, he's Tank Bigsby is who he is to me. That's who I think he is. I don't know. And maybe it's because the running back position has been devalued so much, and not necessarily by me, but just in general and by the way people perceive it. It's like, and then also maybe it's a little bit of legacy in my mind, and that Georgia has always produced stud running backs, that I just have an overwhelming confidence that if any of them got hurt, it's not a big deal, which may be true and it may not be true. It's just in my mind, it sticks out that room is so deep that it wouldn't matter.
I'm here for the Savion Clark, Cash Jones carries. I know Dan is as well. I mean, we talked about on the show when Savion Clark announced that he was going to go into the portal. It happened maybe a week after we mentioned him. Like, Savion Clark and Cash Jones can play probably pretty much anywhere else in college football, aside from maybe elite programs, but they can definitely go to some lower tier SECs and play football. Like, I have no doubt in my mind that some of these walk-ons that Georgia have that are not on scholarship can go play elsewhere. Like, that's just what it is. So, hey, I'm here for the Cash Jones, Savion Clark. I know Dan is. Dan is really high on Savion Clark. That would be Dan's reaction to Malachi Starks having the season he did would be probably times 5 if Savion Clark if he took over for a full season. Like, that is Dan's guy right there. Jeremiah says, Cash Jones is your third down back. That guy will make plays in the receiving game. Hey, I'll believe you on that. Because that's kind of my one question with running backs right now is who's going to kind of replace Kenny McIntosh, who's going to kind of replace that James Cook role. I think Cash Jones' role in the running back's role in the receiving game looks different than it has in years because even Kenny McIntosh, his role in the passing game was different from James Cook. James Cook was a guy you'd motion out, send out wide, and tell him to go beat a linebacker downfield. Not that Kenny McIntosh couldn't, but Kenny McIntosh was the screen game guy. And is Cash Jones going to be that? Possibly. I think Kendall Milton could help out in that area. Maybe even Dejan Edwards can help out in that area. Man, it would be real fun to throw a bubble screen to Branson Robinson. Like that would be really fun to go watch him go roll over a corner or a safety in the box. That'd be real fun to watch. But yeah, I'll agree with you on that. Another one, Dan, and this is kind of where we wrap it up here for this is safety. That's for me when I look at the safety room, like we've said all night, you have names, you have dudes, but outside of Malachi Starks, outside of Dan Jackson, you're kind of betting on. I'm forgetting his second name, Dan. Who is going to start beside Malachi Starks? I'm blanking on his name. You're muted.
I just pulled a Harrison rookie moment. Javon Bullard. Sorry, I had
There
to
we
mute
go.
because I had hiccups.
You're good. Yeah. Aside from Malachi Starks, Javon Bullard, and Dan Jackson, like you're going to rely on some young guys there. We've seen David Daniel at times, but we haven't seen him kind of in like a major contributing role. You have Janelle Guerrero's getting a lot of buzz. Tyke Smith's getting some buzz there. So Tyke may even play star. There's some dudes there. Definitely a lot of highly rated recruits out of high school, but not a lot of production just yet. So that's one place. And then the next one is defense line, Dan. Across the board, Kirby Smart has said that, edge rusher is the place that they are very young and a place where they need to get better at. Now, if Chaz Chambliss goes down, I think obviously Chaz Chambliss wouldn't be the loss that Nolan Smith would because Nolan Smith, was a first-round draft pick. Not a slight against Chaz Chambliss, but Georgia's going to rely on some young guys. This is as young of an edge rushing position as I remember Georgia having. Like, I don't remember edge rushers being this young. Like, it's at the point where you are relying on a freshman like Damon Wilson to come in and kind of play right away. Like, that's the expectation because you lost Nolan Smith, Robert Beal, Aziz Ojulari, all in the span of the last few seasons. Like, that's insane. I'm forgetting one. I'm forgetting another great edge rusher that Georgia's had in the last few years. But yeah, like that's just where it's at. So, but anyways, Dan, do you have anything to add before we move on to week 0 predictions?
Not really. Janelle Aguero, I thought he was a safety, but apparently he's in the running for quarterback too. So I don't know. What do I know?
Anyways, Jonell, I believe Jonell's obviously he can play safety. But I think he's more in the running at star behind whether it's Tyke or Javon, but it sounds like Javon's going to move to safety. Wherever Javon plays is going to determine where everybody else plays is what it sounds like. It's basically what Kirby has told people. But Dan, let's get into some week 0 real quick. I will share my screen. I got the ESPN slate of games pulled up. And, I mean, shoot, this is that kind of offer up, guys. So apologies if we pause for a second. But here's the slate of games. Now, we don't have that Northwestern Nebraska game in Ireland. Like, it wasn't not a really great matchup. Like, yes, like I would much rather see some other games, but it was much better than the slate we got this year, Dan, other than this Vanderbilt game.
Yeah, so you want me to pick some games off of this thing?
Well, whatever. Where do you want to start? What are you most intrigued by?
So like one of the games from my childhood that was always very fun and intriguing was Notre Dame Navy, because Navy actually used to be good once upon a time, and that game had a lot of history to it. So I'll definitely watch that game. The other one for me, Vanderbilt Hawaii, and listen, I know you'll laugh, but remember Vanderbilt went and spanked Hawaii last year. So Hawaii is going to want to get some get back. So that might be kind of an exciting game. USC is going to boat race San Jose State. I thought there was actually a good game. I guess there's not.
I did too. I'm surprised. Like, this is shocking.
Yeah, I could have swore there was one good game, like a kickoff game, but clearly
they're relying on Notre Dame and Navy to draw the audience. Like, that's what it looks like to me. But I mean, NBC's relying on Notre Dame to pull, and then ESPN's relying on UTEP and UMass and New Mexico State. I can tell you what, I'm probably not watching this game, at least intently. But kind of I'm with Dan on this one. Notre Dame Navy is going to be one I watch. I'm curious to see what the spread is here. Notre Dame's definitely a heavy favorite. Definitely a heavy favorite. Notre Dame minus 20.5. Whoo.
Look, pound the over or pound the under, or I don't know. Take the damn 20.5 because Sam Hartman is going to absolutely light it up at Notre Dame.
Hey, I don't disagree with you. I think Sam Hartman's gonna have a good year. Vanderbilt, Hawaii. This one's gonna be a steep line for Vanderbilt. 17.5 after last year. I take it. I take Vanderbilt minus 17.5.
But you don't think Hawaii's going to come to Nashville and want some get back?
The, ooh. I mean, yes, they're definitely gonna want it, but
They're just not going to be good enough to get it.
no. To be frank, no. I don't see that happening. Now the over under may be interesting here with Vanderbilt, but yeah, not a great slate of games here, Dan. Actually, kind of shocked. Why are you not putting on like one of these, kind of a premier matchup week 0? I know the big teams don't want to play on week 0, but
Look at this guy,
pull some money.
Jeremiah coming in with a hot take.
Jeremiah, I'm gonna need some. What are we saying here? What's isn't as bad as last year? What was their record last year? What was Vanderbilt's record?
He's just coming in here throwing hot takes.
Mm-hmm. Vanderbilt was checks notes. I don't even know. 5-7. So is Vanderbilt a 6-win football team, Jeremiah Stoddard? Is that what we're saying?
I don't know.
Bowl
eligible for Vandy.
That's 6 wins. 6 wins. Hold up, Dan. I'm gonna pull back up my screen with the schedule here, and let's count out these L's.
Well, hold on. No, we're doing this. We're doing our predictions next week. Don't start doing that now. Like, we're gonna save it. We're gonna save
All
it.
right, well,
don't give away content.
How is Hawaii not better at everything? Who doesn't want to live there, let alone
So
go?
that's funny. I could actually talk about that a little bit because one of the biggest hurdles that they have is that a lot of parents won't let their kids go to school at Hawaii because they'll never get to go to their games. It's so expensive to travel there and to stay there that people don't go. Like, if you know who Matt Bryant is, Matt Bryant went to Hawaii, the one who kicked for the Falcons for a long time. And I believe Jason Elam also went there, who is a don't shoot the. I think he was a Brookwood kid, Jason Elam. But anyway, yeah, it's in Jeff Ulbrich, who's the defensive coordinator for the Jets. When I was coaching his son, he went to the University of Hawaii, and he said it's absolutely beautiful there, but like nobody comes to the games, nobody can get there. Your parents can't travel there. It's very hard to get recruits because a lot of times, unless it's an official visit, you have to pay your own way, and it's very hard to get like. Just imagine a 5-star from the inner city of Baltimore, right? Like, do you think he's got the money to fly to Hawaii on his own dime? Like, no, he doesn't. So he'd have to commit sight unseen a lot of times or just on the official visit. It's just very, very difficult. Yeah. So yeah, Zach, I mean, to answer your question, that was a question that I had, and I've asked multiple people that played at Hawaii of why it's so difficult. I actually had a chance to ask June Jones, believe it or not. I met him at a golf tournament, and I asked June Jones. I said, you did a great job at Hawaii. You guys were winning. Why doesn't Hawaii win all that time? And he's like, it's just really, really difficult. He said, you just have to get lucky sometimes. So, yeah, I mean, he said more than that, but that's basically the basis of it is just it was so expensive and it's very difficult to stack recruiting class on top of recruiting class like you're going to have to do.
Yeah, and to wrap this up, Dan, before we send it out, that's all for week 0 predictions. There's one last hot topic that we wanted to hit. I'm gonna hit it. We're gonna hit it for the last segment of the show. Out of every college football player to ever play the game, who off the top of your head would have made the most money, NIL money, in the NIL era?
All right,
if NIL was a thing.
If NIL was a thing, and I could pick any college football player that's ever played, who would have made the most money? All right, so I thought this was an easy slam dunk answer. And then as I was driving home when I wasn't talking to you, I was like, oh my God, I don't know the answer to this question because there are 3 guys who I think would just massively benefit. I'll eliminate one, but my original, I thought slam dunk answer was Reggie Bush. I thought Reggie Bush would have been it because he was probably the most dominant player I've ever seen in my lifetime. Video game, joystick, personality galore. Everybody loved him. He played in Los Angeles. I mean, like everything pointed to he would just blow it out of the water. But then I got reminded by watching the Johnny Doc of the massive chaotic storm that Johnny Manziel was. So I honestly I don't know between the two of them. Like I said, my initial reaction was Reggie Bush because he was everything to everybody, and you could market the piss out of that guy. But God Almighty, I forgot. I mean, I remembered, but then when it's thrown in your face the way that the documentary did, and kudos for them for not holding anything back. I mean, they did not even for a second did they dodge anything. They went all out. But it's one of those two, in my opinion. If you're curious who my third one was, it was Michael Vick. But anyway, Harrison, who do you have? I mean, I'm really interested to hear yours because you're so young that everything you say is like a brand new player. So I can't wait to hear this.
It would be easy to go with Arch Manning because he's already making a load of money off of the NIL. At least is what they say. But I'm gonna go separate of you. I'm gonna go.
Did you consider any? Did you consider?
I did. Okay. I did. I just you used one of the ones I was considering. And I didn't. I put Johnny Manziel off limits for me because I thought that's where you would go. But Matt Leinart, we're talking about the quarterback of USC, the Heisman Trophy winner. Yeah, teammates with Reggie Bush. Like those two as a duo would have made so much bank. Like so much money off of NIL. I think they're so profitable. Had relationships with Snoop Dogg, Will Ferrell. Like you talk about a marketable brand right there. I think 2005, 2004 USC is it. No question in my mind that man Leinart could have raked in a lot of money because nobody on the football field is more marketable than a quarterback, in my opinion. Not one. Maybe running back comes close, just in terms of people know who they are. But when you go back to that time and you say who's the quarterback at USC, they're gonna know who Matt Leinart is, and I think that would make him, very very marketable right next to Reggie Bush. But yeah, I mean Johnny Manziel, the endowment numbers that documentary put out was insane.
$740 million in 1 year. All right, okay. So Matt Leinart, two things. One, does really good work on television on the Pac-10 network, which I don't know what that's going to be after this. But he started his own TikTok page, and he is freaking hilarious. And he has access to a lot of celebrities. Richard Jefferson does almost all of them with him. The one about the trainer training his wife was freaking hilarious. If you haven't checked out Matt Leinart's TikTok, and I know I'm giving him free publicity, but you just made me think of something. There is a quarterback that was arguably the best looking quarterback to ever come through college football. And he played at a time where this school was still the king of the mountain as far as publicity goes. He didn't do anything in the NFL, which blew my mind because I thought this guy was going to be the next Hall of Fame quarterback. Smartest guy ever.
I have no clue you're talking about.
Best looking guy ever. Jacked. Brady Quinn. Brady Quinn was everything. When he was at Notre Dame, he was everything. He was on every newspaper cover or newspaper. He was in every newspaper. He was on the cover of every magazine. He was on he did everything. I mean, granted, his NFL career didn't happen, but dude, I have to consider that now. Now that I just totally forgot about Brady Quinn. If you don't know who Brady Quinn is, look him up and you'll be like, oh, okay, I get it. So anyway, that's your Matt Leinart maybe come because they played at the same time.
Yeah, I'd never thought of Brady Quinn, to be honest. I know who he is because he's on the TV screen these days, but I'll give you that.
Zach, you bring up an interesting point with Tebow. I don't know that Tebow would take money from a lot of different places. Like, I think he would be very selective about where he takes money from. I think there are other guys that would just take money from every direction. I think Tebow would be very focused on certain aspects of it. Like, I'm sure he would take, I don't know. That's an interesting question, Zach. That's a hell of a question.
What about any guys from the U prime time Miami. Out of all those guys,
I don't know because everybody hated them.
It's definitely
if you weren't a Miami fan, which for whatever reason I didn't hate Miami. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. I never hated them, but almost it was either you loved Miami or you absolutely hated them, and almost everybody I knew hated them. So that would be interesting as well. But they had so many stars, but how many of them were truly marketable?
And
maybe Michael Irvin.
That team. That team.
But Michael Irvin wasn't who he was until much later.
Yeah.
Like he was, I don't know. It's
an interesting conversation. Yeah. But hey, that's gonna wrap it up for today's episode of the Top Ball Talk podcast. That's Dan Kiley, or that's Dan Kiley. Dang, you have to do like the opposite, man. That still gets me. I should mirror my camera that way when I look to my right, it's pointing to my right instead of looking to my left. Anyways, that's Dan Kiley over there. I'm Harris Reno, episode 97 of the Top Ball Talk podcast. Guys, it's game week next week. Be prepared. It's going to be a great season. Like I said earlier a few weeks ago, we're here every Tuesday, 7:30, live on YouTube. You can find us afterwards on pretty much every podcast platform imaginable, distributed everywhere. iTunes, Spotify, we're there. I believe we're even on SoundCloud, which I'm not a SoundCloud user. I don't even know if Dan knows what that is.
I think SoundCloud's going away, right?
Is it?
Because I listened to my podcasts that I listen to on Apple. They said, if you're listening to this on SoundCloud, find another avenue.
Ooh, dang. Well, I didn't even know that. So Dan shocked me that he even knows what SoundCloud is.
I don't know what it is. I just heard the commercial.
Yeah. Well, let me look that up real quick because I do know. I think we're on there. He may not be on there now that I look at it. I'll have to check it out. But yeah, we're almost everywhere. So you can find us everywhere. Anyways, Dan Kiley, I'm here, Sereno. Make sure to like, subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Dan Kiley3 and at Harrison Reno. Dan, you want to close us out?
Make sure to like, subscribe, follow us, interact with us, tell your friends, help the show grow. We enjoy doing it, but we can't do it forever if nobody watches. So tell your friends, somebody watch. Till next week, stay classy, boys. I was going to steal your thing, Jeremiah, but I